We are rolling.
So tell me when to start.
As you want.
Okay, I read this recent issue of Jinnah in which there is a certain Dr. John Sosky who has hinted at this map which supposedly Gandhi and Jinnah arrived at an agreement about the future delineation of the borders of India. I'm not sure what to do with this, because John Sosky then goes on to interview somebody called Hamid Barsani, who is described as an elusive mercurial Iranian archaeologist. Now, what the connection between Iran and Pakistan and India, now all of this sounds very fantastic to me. I'm a historian. I have a certain kind of investment in fact and the truth, and I'm from India. So I thought maybe, I don't know if this Dr. John Sosky exists, or even Hamid Barsani exists, or even this map exists. But there are certain things that I do know from my research, and I believe in research. Research is crucial in all of this. So what I'll do here is I'll read. I'm a careful guy. I don't like extemporizing. And I don't like this thing about sovereignty, theology, patrocracy. I'm afraid I have no time for all of these kinds of jargon. We shouldn't mislead people. That shouldn't be the object of history. So what I want to present before you is something that's a result of my research. Now, I've been doing research for 20 years, been teaching Indian history for more. So I think what I have to say is interesting, important, and unknown. And I think John Sosky, if he exists, and this map, if it exists, it's drawing upon something that probably has a grain of truth in it. So what I'll do now is I'll read for you something that I wrote up in response to these feverish kind of speculations that go on about dragon tyrants and sovereign law, apophasis. What is apophasis? Castles, watchtower. There's a proliferation of words here. So let's get down to facts. So I've always felt at the level of a suspicion, an inkling, a creeping sense of history, which is not yet past, that there is such a map, that this map is true, it does exist, whatever else may not exist. And it takes me back to the recent insinuation of a correspondence, brief but lapidary, between Fernand Braudel, the famous French historian, writing from a prisoner of war camp in Lubeck in 1940 to Gandhi. Now, Braudel is struggling with the anthropocentrism of the Annales school to which he belongs, and he's drawn inexorably but resisting towards Gandhi's rejection of history. You might well ask why. I don't have the answer to that. And he asks Gandhi a gentle question about the relation between nature and sovereignty. And Gandhi writes to him with some candid asides about Romain Rolland, who you all know went on to win the Nobel Prize for Literature, richly undeserved. And these asides have been suppressed by the estate of that great sentimentalist Rolland. And all that Gandhi says is one word: water. Braudel persists in the second letter, now addressing Gandhi no longer as Mahatma, but as Maestro, and asks, so, do you mean, and I'm quoting here, so, do you mean the fluvial as that which stands outside history and asserts its own sovereignty? Gandhi again persists gnomically and teasingly. He says, water is God. I'm not clear what he means by this, but Gandhi was prone to say that most things were God. So I presume that there's an interesting epistemological point that's being posed here. The next letter from Braudel, of which only a fragment survives, I have it here, but I don't think I really need to put it forward as evidence. This is, after all, a brief interview. The next letter from Braudel, of which only a fragment survives, the silverfish at Wardha, having been persistent, says, from what I can piece together, that fluvial and alluvial together make up the twin poles of a history beyond history. Then Gandhi raises the issue of water with Jinnah in October 1946 in a mischievous retort to the latter's grandiloquent remark that he would have Pakistan even if it were the size of a handkerchief. Much water will flow from this remark, Jinnah Sahib, Gandhi said. Jinnah snapped, yes, water flows, borders are futile. Nehru resists this, and Patel dreams of royalty falling at his feet. It's a peasant's perversion of the order of things, and suddenly they both seem to have seen it, a new map that stood outside of history, outside of the modern, and corresponding to a secular theology of space. I'm afraid I must use some jargon here, just to, if only to match this fictional John Sosky, Hamid Parsani dialogue. The 5 rivers on one side like digits from a wrist, and the chaos of reticulate waters across the peninsula, the 5 rivers being the rivers of the Punjab. One cannot map water, said Gandhi, and Mahadev, his scribe, writing faithfully in his yellowing notebook, Mahadev Desai, records Jinnah's jibe, and MK, it took you this long, did it? And striding to the bookshelf, he brings out a loose sheaf of papers covered in crabbed handwriting, soil clinging to the edges, which I presume he was referring to the notes that Brodel made in Lübeck. And he asked, do you know of this man Fernand? And it's almost like a moment of epiphany, because Mahadev writes that Gandhi and Jinnah embraced, Jinnah somewhat awkwardly. Jinnah didn't like to embrace people or ideas. Well, one idea he did embrace. And on the back of a note from Rajagopalachari, who was also crucial to the transfer of power, draws a map. No borders, no Pakistan, no India, just water. Rivers that embrace the Hindu Kush, the Himalayas, the Aravalis, Vindhya and Satpura, the Sahyadris, coursing and corroding the attachments of borders. The map, wrote Mahadev, looked like a hand over the geography of the subcontinent, a hand with its digits and reticulated veins, a hand from the past raised in blessing. This may have been Mahadev's sentimentality, but it was a hand, nevertheless, summoning up water to redress the tyranny of land. And I'll stop here.